There we go. And if you turn the knob, this increases the voltage or decreases it. Hi there. If you are like me, you may have started recently to experiment with electricals and stuff like that, and more often than not you find yourself in a situation where you need some kind of power source, maybe 12 volts for LEDs or 9 volts for some kind of motor, 7.2, whatever. So what you're gonna need for that is a thing like that. Just a wall adapter. Mine comes with 16.6 volts, maybe, just one LED, a red one for example. Some resistors for the LED. You're gonna need a switch, of course. One of these things, which is just a voltage reader, basically. And one of these chips. I'll link all these components in the video description, so you don't have to search for them. And these, you can just salvage that from all electronics. This costs maybe 10 euros or something like that. This is like 2 euros. This as well, and switch is basically nothing. So this costs, if you have this and have resistors, about $10 or something. So it's very cheap. Yeah, so let's get started. Right, so before we just start soldering stuff together, we'll have to plan this stuff. So let's just draw out what you're gonna do. We have the adapter here, and outcomes. In my case, this is just for my case, I've got 16 volts, 16.6 volts positive, and we have the ground. And this will go into these two here, in plus and in minus. This is inside, then we've got the out side, which is then the regulated voltage, where you just plug in your stuff. And then, as I said, we have to measure the voltage with this little thing here, which we're gonna do here in parallel, of course. And that's the most basic part of that, but we want to have a switch in here, and we of course put the switch in here. I'll show how to do that later on. And the LED. And the problem is this thing runs at about 2 volts, so we need some kind of voltage divider to step that 16.6 volt down to 2 volts, and so that this whole thing just doesn't blow up. So it's something which is very crucial to do it here. We've got our one resistor, then we've got the LED, which just goes from here to ground. Ground basically negative. And another resistor, which goes to ground, this too. And this is the LED. Yeah, now we have to do some math to work out what kind of resistor values we need. So we know that VLED is equal to Vin times R2 divided by R1 plus R2. And we have some values. We know, for example, that VLED is 2 volts. And we know that Vin is equal to 16.6 volts in my case. This is, it's 2 volts. Now we have to work out what R1 is expressed in terms of R2. I'll just do that and see you in a bit. Alright, here we are. We know that 7.3 times R2 is equal to R1. Okay, so we now got this relation here, and we can just choose our resistor values, and I'm just gonna use around 200 ohms, which is kind of common when using with LEDs, for R2, and that makes R1 1460 ohms, which is quite convenient because I've got a 1 kilo ohm resistor and I've got 470 ohm resistors, so we just need 3 resistors for that. We need, of course, 4 resistors because we can use 100 plus 100. So now we have to start soldering. Alright, sorry about that, I forgot to press record. I have now soldered this adapter to the in pins of focus please, the in pins of this chip here, and 2 cables, of course, to the output. And, you know, as usual, negative is black and positive is red. Right, now I've got this wire here cut down, and we have to build in this switch here. And I'm not too familiar with this switch, so we're just gonna check how this works. Okay, so we're just gonna check the continuity for this. Alright, so these two are open circuit, and if we switch this over, they should... Yeah, right, cool. So if you want to switch it, we can just solder these two on these 2 cable ends onto these 2 pins. I'm just gonna do that now off camera and I'll be right back. Alright, so we've got it hooked up, and let's just test. We're pretty much 0 volts. Switch on, 16.678, whatever. Right, works, great. Let's now solder in the volt meter thing. Shouldn't be too much of a problem to just... Alright, here we are. Works quite well. It's definitely on there. Let's see whether it works. Whoops. Wow, that just blew right out. Alright, got it. Interesting thing actually. The thing wasn't even plugged in. So the little flash of light we saw there was probably some charge left in the capacitors or something. So I'm just gonna plug it in. And huh. Cool. So the switch doesn't seem to work properly. Yeah, I'm just gonna change the switch out there, but you can see the voltmeter thing definitely works. Alright, got the new switch installed, and now it's working perfectly. And as you can see, we have set this output voltage as 12 volts here, or 11.9, you know. And you can just regulate that with this little potentiometer here. Alright, here we are. We've got resistor R1 and R2, we've got the LED and some cables to, or wires to connect it to these in ports. I'll just solder everything up and I'll be right back. Alright, here we are back, and I've got it soldered up. I've got R1, R2, and then of course positive and negative lead. And before we solder it on, I'll just check whether the LED light's on. Alright, works. Cool. Now I can solder it on. Alright, now it's soldered on. Works. It's all dim for my taste. Maybe the resistors weren't perfect after all. But it definitely works. So, yeah. Let's proceed then. Right, to finish the electrical side of this project, I've just soldered on some female cable ends from breadboards, so we can just plug in the cables. And yeah, that's basically it. Now we have to build a box and make a turning knob for this potentiometer. Right, so this is how I want the box to look like. It's basically just a box with this multimeter on here on the front, and the positive and negative terminals, and of course the turning knob so you can adjust the voltage. So we have to lay out these parts on basically one side of this box, and then we can just get all the other measurements from that. Alright, there's the box. It's about 13 by 9 centimeters wide. The actual measurements really don't mean too much. Alright, there it is. It's just, you know, you can basically use any kind of saw you have to saw this thing out. It's just a rectangle. Now we have to lay down all the positions for the electrical stuff. Alright, this is the front plate. Now for the rest of the box we'll just make 3 more of these plates, of course without all the holes and stuff, and then 2 bigger plates which are basically gonna be the bottom and top plate. Here we are, all the plates sawn out, and you know, if you want to you can just sand off the edges a little bit, straighten all the cuts. Alright, now we're gonna glue all the pieces together. Maybe some wood with that. Right, so for the knob for turning the potentiometer here, I just got this little dowel here, I think it's like 10 millimeters, and drill a hole in the middle here, so you can just glue it onto here and then turn it from the outside. Now the next few steps definitely are optional, like you don't have to do them, but it definitely goes a long way to just paint these things. So I've got some red here for the body and for the back plate, which I actually got some holes in for the screws later on, and a little slot for the cable. And the front panel is gonna be grey, like very bright grey. And the turning knob is gonna be black. Alright, here we are. Paint is dry as a bone, and we can now start to attach all the electricals to the back side of this panel. Yeah, no, the back panel isn't too pretty, but well, you're not gonna see it later on. Right, so we can start by putting the LED in there and putting the voltage measurement thing in there as well. There it is. Cool. And of course it's backwards. So yeah, that's better. And this switch has to go in here as well. So, well, right, now we need some screws. I've got some very small screws, like these. You know, you find them in cheap plastic toys, for example. You can just glue these in place actually, but I prefer to screw them. Yes, that's lots of room. Doesn't look too bad, does it? Okay. I think I'll just put in a drop of glue there. And now we have to get this thing onto there, including the turning pin. Alright, this should do it. It's not visible, the screws aren't visible from the outside. And here's the pin. Here's the turning pin, should now just fit fine. Yeah, works just fine. Now I have to glue it in place. So just the slightest hint of a drop should already be enough. Don't want to glue the rotating pin to the potentiometer itself, right? Just to the knob. And you probably can't see a thing there, can you? Okay, this should suffice, I guess. And while this dries, we can just glue this, not glue this, screw this to the housing. So again, like screwing isn't really the only option here. You can glue this, but this makes it kind of impossible to get into this later on and repair something or something else. As you can see, cable management isn't my strong suit, but it works, I guess. And now we can see why I cut this little slot in here. So for this cable. Like that. And I'm just gonna screw that on and see you in a second. Alright, here we are. The glue has cured and I've written some specs on there, of course, 0 to 15 volts DC. That definitely depends on the adapter you've got, because the chip we used in there can only step down voltage. So the voltage this thing is able to supply can only be is the maximum this thing can supply. Then of course the 0, 1 switch, positive, negative, and then if you turn it this way, this will increase the voltage, I think. I hope. Alright, let's plug that in. And there we go. And if you turn the knob, this increases the voltage or decreases it. And I've got some LEDs here, an LED strip and a motor. And I think these two run on 12 volts DC. So I'm just gonna put this into 12 volts, here we go. And then put in some leads. I've got the positive here. And then this way around, the negative here. Alright, and then let's try to get this LED to light up. There we go. You see, this, the contacts are a little bit bad because the LED strips are old, but it definitely works. Yep, you can even change the color, I think. Yeah, there we go. And of course, I just check, this motor can turn on this as well. There we go. It's perfect to check these little things. And of course we can just step that down to level 1, 9 volts, 6, 5, whatever we want, yeah. Alright, cool. That worked. And thanks for watching. Take care.